You know those rare moments where everything just clicks. Your mind is clear, your decisions feel obvious, and you finally feel like yourself again. And then it fades. The fog returns, your certainty disappears, and suddenly you're back in the loop, reactive, uncertain, unclear, without knowing why. This episode is about why that happens and how to stop it. We'll talk about the energy mechanics behind clarity, the invisible forces that keep you split between two versions of yourself, and how to finally stabilize your mental and energetic coherence. This is Amara Strand. Welcome back to my podcast. Today, we're getting into the mechanics of clarity, why it fades, what fragments it, and how to stop cycling between breakthrough and confusion. Because clarity isn't just a mental state, it's a power state. And when your energy dips, so does your access to your own knowing. Here's what's actually happening when your clarity fades in and out like that. That split between clear you and confused you, it's not a metaphor, it's energetic. You know how your laptop runs differently depending on its power source? When it's plugged in, everything works at full capacity. The screen is bright, programs run smoothly, you can have multiple applications open without any lag. But when it's running on battery, and when that battery starts getting low, it automatically shifts into power saver mode. And the screen dims, processing slows down, some functions become unavailable. Your clarity works in much the same way. When you have enough energy, when you're plugged in to your full power source, you can see your reality with exceptional sharpness and full resolution. You inhabit that clarity. You see the world through it. You speak from it. You look different. You sound different. You carry yourself differently because you're running on full energy. But when your energy drops below a certain threshold, you automatically shift into a kind of mental and emotional power saver mode. Your perception dims. Your executive functioning slows down. Your ability to see patterns and solutions becomes limited. The part of you that tracks nuance and pattern just goes offline. You lose high-resolution perception. And you don't just lose insight, you lose access to it. You can't retrieve what you saw so clearly because you're no longer the version of yourself who had access to that clarity. That's why it can feel like the breakthrough never happened, like it was a dream. The version of you who knew doesn't exist in the moment you're trying to remember, and you rarely notice the switch down into power saver mode because it feels familiar. I had a client, let's call her Rachel, who kept cycling through this exact pattern. In our session, she'd reach a state of absolute clarity about her marriage. She could name every toxic dynamic. She didn't just describe what was going wrong, she understood it, mapped it out, saw her way through it. Her voice was strong, her thinking was sharp, her resolve was immovable. This was Rachel operating on full power. I can see it all so clearly now, she'd say. I know exactly what I need to do. But it wasn't just that she could see clearly, she was clear. She was inhabiting a completely different version of herself, more present, more authoritative, more alive. She wasn't just accessing an ability. She had become someone who operated from clarity. A week later, she'd show up for our session as a different person entirely, unrecognizable, confused, uncertain, making excuses for her husband's behavior that she'd just seen through with laser precision. The sharp voice was gone. The insight had evaporated. She was confused, tentative, walking back everything she'd just seen with such confidence. Maybe I was being too judgmental, she'd say, in this smaller voice. It was like watching someone's blood sugar crash, only it was raw, personal energy rather than glucose. When her energy was high, she wasn't just thinking clearly, she was a clearer person. She could think strategically, see patterns, hold multiple perspectives simultaneously. She was able to remain anchored to her internal compass. She was inhabiting her full intelligence, her full presence, her full power. But when her energy dropped, and it always dropped, she didn't just lose the ability to see her situation clearly. Her identity changed. She reverted to being the confused, uncertain, low-resolution version of herself. The woman who had spoken with such authority just a week before felt like a stranger, even to herself. And here's what's really happening when your clarity keeps slipping. It's not that you're forgetting a technique or losing a skill set. You're cycling between two entirely different states of being, two versions of you, divided by an energetic threshold. There's a specific energy threshold required for sustained clarity and executive functioning. Think of it like the minimum power requirement for a high-performance computer. Below that threshold, your system automatically downshifts into a lower functioning mode. And just like the laptop, on full power, everything runs bright and fluid. On low battery, you're conserving resources, shutting down background processes, and trying to make it through the day. When your energy drops, your system, you know that feeling. When your perception narrows, your ability to discern complexity flattens, and you no longer feel like yourself because you're not the same version of yourself. And here's a distinction I want you to understand. The low energy version of you doesn't just feel different. It has no access to what the high energy version saw and understood. It's like that insight, that clarity happened to somebody else. You might have had a breakthrough on Tuesday, clear as day, deeply embodied. And by Friday, it feels theoretical, distant, like something you read, not something you lived. It was real, but you've dropped below the threshold required to stay in contact with it. That's what creates the split, not just between ideas, but between identities, two operational selves, each defined by its capacity to render a higher or lower resolution of reality. And trying to sustain clarity while flipping between them, it's exhausting. You end up running two different systems, and the low energy version has to keep rediscovering what the clear one already knows, over and over, like energetic amnesia. But once you reach that threshold consistently, once you stop dropping below it, something fundamental shifts. You stop splitting. You don't just think clearly, you remain yourself, not in moments of clarity, but continuously. And that's the real definition of clarity. Now you understand why your clarity keeps fading. You're toggling between two different internal states, divided by energy. But here's why it's so hard to stay above that threshold. And you're not going to want to hear this. And very few of you will hear this and then actually do something about it. But here it is. You're addicted to excitation. Not consciously, but your nervous system has been marinating in mental and emotional stimulation, well, for years, forever. Worry, rumination, interpersonal drama, people-pleasing, they all generate a specific chemical cocktail. And your system has come to equate that cocktail with normalcy, with being alive. When you worry, your brain releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. When you get caught in emotional loops, you're flooding your system with dopamine and norepinephrine. When you're engaging in those internal mental battles, you're triggering the same fight or flight chemistry that our ancestors used to escape predators. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between real threats and imaginary ones. It just knows that this chemical cocktail creates a sense of aliveness, of importance, of being fully engaged. And after years of this, your baseline has shifted. You've trained your nervous system to equate stimulation with safety, excitation with being alive. It feels familiar. And the addiction is subtle. It doesn't always show up as overt anxiety or crisis. Sometimes it shows up as your need to track everyone else's emotional state, your reflex to over-engage, your tendency to narrate and re-narrate drama that isn't even yours. Someone tells you a story and you get that hit or that charge. You feel lit up, activated. Even if the story is tragic or gossip, even if it's none of your business, and then you amplify it, repeat it, maybe even insert yourself into it. And when there's no external drama available, when there's nothing good on TV, so to speak, you spin your own internal drama, mental rehearsals, imaginary conflicts, elaborate worry scenarios, because you can only tolerate so much peace, contentedness, and neutrality. You can only tolerate so much of being alone in your own space, in your own experience. So when you stop feeding the thought loops and find yourself in that calm, neutral state, your system doesn't recognize it as peace. It sees it as a flat line, boring, unfamiliar, potentially dangerous. Your nervous system starts scanning for the next hit of stimulation, the next problem to solve, the next outrage, the next thing to worry about, the next tasty drama to get involved in. Because excitation, even negative excitation, feels more familiar than the energy required for sustained clarity. This drama addiction depletes your natural energy reserves in the same way that your adrenals get depleted with a constant diet of stimulants. It robs you of the natural energy you need to truly upgrade from reactive, unconscious patterns to ones that have more clarity, expanded awareness, and resilience. It is in essence a sabotage routine. This is why building tolerance for neutrality, for the kind of inner stillness that allows clarity to emerge, requires actually retraining your nervous system. You're literally teaching your body to find satisfaction in a completely different neurochemical state. Now here's the part that shifts the whole equation. You're not just dealing with your own habits or conditioning, you're operating inside a system that is structurally designed to keep you underpowered. This isn't some conspiracy theory. It's totally obvious once you see it. Every institution, every technology, every aspect of society is designed to capture your attention, hook you, and siphon your energy. Social media algorithms are literally programmed to trigger your drama addiction. News cycles are designed to keep you in a state of perpetual anxiety. Even your workplace operates on artificial urgency and manufactured stress. You're swimming in an ocean of energy drain mechanisms and then wondering why you can't maintain the energy threshold required for sustained clarity. You've probably noticed what happens when you step outside of all this, when you go deep into nature, away from anything man-made and the low-grade hum of social friction. You've probably experienced this. You spend a few days camping in the wilderness, away from all technology, all human-made stimulation, and something in your system settles. You feel more present, more clear, more like yourself. Your system recalibrates. You might imagine that the earth or trees or ocean are giving you energy, and that certainly does happen too. But what you're mostly experiencing is simply a cessation of the energy drain mechanisms built into society. No screens demanding your attention, no notifications triggering micro-stress responses, no artificial lighting disrupting your circadian rhythms, no electromagnetic fields from devices interfering with your nervous system, no energy load from having to maintain your personas in social interactions, just the absence of all the things that have been steadily draining your energy. This removal from structural energy siphons supports monks in reaching the kind of clarity that feels unattainable in everyday life. It's not just their spiritual practices, it's that they do these practices in an environment that isn't structured to metabolize their energy. You, on the other hand, are being metabolized all the time through your devices, through your obligations, through the perpetual background hum of internal and external interference that you've come to call life. And no, you probably don't want to commit yourself to monastic life, but you also can't afford to pretend the system is neutral, because it's not. It's optimized to keep you stimulated enough to stay distracted and drained enough to keep you pliable. Because a population operating from continuous clarity would be much harder to manipulate, much harder to sell to, much harder to control through manufactured crises and artificial desire. Clarity isn't just hard to access, it's economically inefficient for a system that profits from your confusion. So the question becomes, how do you reclaim your energy inside a structure that's built to keep you below the line? You already know the obvious drains, thought loops, anxiety spirals, emotional entanglements, but the more subtle drains are often the most potent because they don't just pull energy, they distort you. Let's start with energetic cords. Cords are structural links between you and other people, institutions, roles, even ideas. A cord isn't just a connection, it's a channel of influence. It shapes how you feel, what you think, what you believe you have to do to remain safe or loved or acceptable. When you're corded, you're not just leaking energy, you're being shaped. Your system is bending itself around an external influence you may not even recognize as foreign. Sometimes cords are temporary, natural points of attunement during relationship, interaction, or collaboration. You adjust to connect, and then you return to yourself. But cords that never get dissolved, they install themselves as permanent fixtures. They deform your baseline. And over time, you forget what your actual shape is. You start mistaking the distortion for your true self. You can be corded to lovers, family, religious or political ideologies, even institutions or groups. Each cord is a continuous energy drain and a source of ongoing influence that shapes your thoughts, emotions, and decisions without your conscious awareness. Then there's digital media. I know, you're not giving it up. Every time you interact with technology, scrolling social media, checking mail, consuming news, you're not just paying attention. You're making energetic transactions that can add up to serious energy outflow. Your nervous system treats each notification like a micro-emergency. Each scroll through social media triggers tiny stress responses. And each news headline activates your threat detection systems. But beyond the physical effects, there's something more subtle happening. Digital environments are designed to capture and monetize your attention, which means they're designed to create energetic dependency. The algorithms learn what triggers your emotional responses and feed you more of that, keeping you in reactive loops that excite and then drain your energy. This keeps you locked out of neutral, off balance, and unable to remain in your own center of gravity. You're not just consuming digital content, you're being consumed by it. It's not a media diet, it's a behavioral conditioning loop. And it runs in the background so constantly, you stop noticing it's there. And here's what makes this particularly insidious. You experience these drains as normal background noise, part of modern life. But each one is an energy hemorrhage. Each notification, each scroll through your feed is a withdrawal from your energy reserves that you need to reach and maintain that threshold for sustained clarity. Think of it like having 50 small holes in a bucket. None of them seem significant on their own, but collectively, they prevent you from ever filling the bucket enough to overflow into sustained clarity. Let me give you a concrete example of what this threshold looks like in real life and why reaching it consistently is so critical. Imagine someone who's been in a psychologically abusive relationship. After months or years of manipulation, something insidious happens. They build what I call an internal replica. It's a construct in their mind that runs the abuser's programming. Same tone, same criticism, same emotional coercion, but it speaks in the voice of their own thoughts. It doesn't feel like someone else, it feels like you. This replica isn't an idea, it's an installation. It's like an AI is installed in your mind, but instead of being trained on your own life experience and wisdom, this internal AI has been trained exclusively on the abuser's thoughts, opinions, needs, and fears. So when it speaks, it's not offering your authentic insights or intuition. It's running the abuser's programming. Now, let's say this person begins to do the work. They start disentangling, waking up, building up enough energy to finally reach that clarity threshold. And for the first time, they can see it all clearly. The replica, the programming, the manipulation. They hear that inner voice and recognize, this isn't mine. These are his thoughts, his values, his shame loops, not mine. It's liberating, it's razor sharp, and it's so obvious. They can't believe they ever mistook it for themselves, but they're still in the relationship, still courted, still under active drain. So what happens? Their energy drops, and when it does, the replica boots back up, seamlessly, silently, and starts speaking again in the voice they mistake for their own. They don't forget what they saw, they simply re-enter the version of themselves who doesn't have full access to it. That's why people can have powerful realizations about a toxic relationship and then days later defend it, doubt it, rewrite it, get blurry. It's not weakness, it's energy deficiency. It's the mechanics of energetic fragmentation. If you're still being drained by a person, a system, an old pattern, you will fall below the threshold. And when you do, you won't just feel foggy, you'll become someone else, the low energy version of yourself. That cycling between clarity and confusion, sovereignty and collapse burns through a lot of energy. Not the work of seeing, but the labor of trying to stay clear while constantly shape-shifting. This isn't about staying calm or emotionally regulated. It's about access. Can you stay in contact with the version of yourself who knows? And can you do that continuously? Because until you do, clarity won't hold. Because the version of yourself who can embody it isn't always home. This is what's really at stake when we talk about the importance of managing your energy. It's not just about feeling peaceful or having good insights. It's about maintaining enough energy to remain yourself, to access your full intelligence and awareness continuously, rather than cycling between two different versions of who you are. Now that you understand what's at stake and what it takes to stabilize into continuous clarity, let's talk about what makes that threshold so difficult to reach and stay above. Even if you cut the cords, even if you unplug from stimulation, even if you stop engaging with the people and patterns that drain you, you'll still face one more challenge. You have to learn to tolerate neutrality itself. This sounds simple, but it's not. As I mentioned before, your nervous system has to literally retrain itself to recognize peace as normal, desirable, not as the weird pause between crises. I remember my own process with this. After I stopped engaging with a particular pattern that had consumed years of my mental energy, I found myself in this incredibly still space, no churning thoughts, no emotional charge, no familiar background hum of anxiety and vigilance. And I didn't feel liberated. I actually felt uneasy, like I was supposed to be worried about something, hooked into something. I'd catch myself reaching for problems to mull over, just to generate that familiar sense of mental activity and control. It was like a smoker reaching for cigarettes, automatic, unconscious, driven by the body's craving for its accustomed chemical state. But here's what I discovered. Building tolerance for neutrality isn't just about sitting with uncomfortable feelings. It's about recognizing that neutrality is actually your natural, high-functioning state, your true baseline. When you're truly neutral, not numb, not checked out, but genuinely rooted into neutrality, your system can finally stop spending energy on internal management and redirect that power toward conscious creation. Because neutrality, it isn't emptiness, it's availability. It's having your full energy reserves accessible for a higher order of response to life, rather than constantly tied up in internal drama and external obligation. But getting there requires moving through withdrawal from crisis, from chaos, from your own internal theater, and learning to value and really, I would say, bask in the nourishment and stability of the neutral state. If you learn to stay in neutral, something changes. You stop flinching at your own stillness. You stop craving a charge to feel alive. And from that place, clarity doesn't have to be summoned. It just is there, waiting. So let's talk about the fundamentals of energy mastery. It's a big topic, but we can cover some of the basics. How do you actually build the kind of energy mastery that lets you reach and hold that threshold? It starts with precision. You have to know where your energy is going, not in vague or general terms, but with surgical clarity. Here are 5 practices that will upgrade your energy management if you use them consistently. First, cord cutting. Learning to actively disconnect from energetic attachments that are draining you. This isn't just about cutting people out of your life, but about maintaining energetic boundaries so you're not unconsciously supporting other people's emotional needs or straight up vampiric diet with your life force. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that got entangled in someone else's emotional circuitry. If you're leaking energy through loyalty, guilt, or unspoken contracts, you're corded. The second place to look is your digital boundaries. And most of you are going to hate this. Most of you won't tackle this earnestly. That's how addicted and plugged in we are. But still, I'm going to say it because it's huge. Audit your digital life. Create specific times and spaces where you're completely disconnected from all digital stimulation. No notifications, no scrolling, no screens, no devices. Let your nervous system remember what baseline actually feels like without constant stimulation and interruption. Regain control over your digital consumption and accessibility. Third, attention versus investment auditing. Attention costs energy. You know this. But investment, that's where your life force just really goes out the door. You can notice something and attend to it without getting involved or invested. You can witness without pouring your identity into it. Start asking, am I just seeing this or am I getting hooked by it? Am I feeding it? Fourth, your physical body is the foundation of your energy reserves. This means sleep, movement, nutrition, breathing, and yes, your sexual energy. How you express or contain your sexual energy has enormous impact on your overall vitality and mental clarity. But approach all of this from an energy perspective, not just health. How do your choices in what you do with and how you care for your body affect the energy you have available for consciousness? And lastly, fifth, internal rehearsal elimination. Those imaginary conversations, those future conflicts that you're bracing for, those clever responses you'll never deliver, cut them off. You're spending real energy on events that don't exist. You're running full body simulations of stress or desire scenarios that haven't happened and probably never will. Or maybe they have happened, but they're over. And then you're wondering why you feel distracted, fragmented, and depleted. Every moment you spend inside a non-intentional, non-creative fantasy is a moment that you're not building the energy required for real clarity. Your imagination is sacred, powerful, and expensive to run. This isn't about perfect control. It's about energetic discernment. You get to choose where your power goes. And when you start making those choices consistently, you stop bleeding energy. You stop dropping below the threshold. And clarity stops being an accident or a fluctuating peak experience, and it becomes your new baseline. When you finally stabilize your energy, when you stop leaking and start retaining, you don't just feel clearer, you stop splintering. You stop losing traction. You stop having to rebuild yourself after each crash. You stop re-explaining things you already knew, relearning insights you've had a dozen times. Instead, you start building, layer by layer, from a stable foundation of knowing. Sustained clarity doesn't mean you're calm all the time. It doesn't mean you'll never feel doubt or grief or activation. But it does mean you're not overwritten by those states. You stay present, you stay intact. Even in motion, you don't lose your center of gravity. You don't forget who you are and what's real. You stop being two different people. You become continuous. And from that continuity comes something rare, what I call radical sanity. Not the kind that floats above life pretending nothing's wrong, but the kind that's fully in it, feeling everything, tracking everything, without being pulled under. That's what clarity makes possible. You stop spinning your wheels, you stop burning through your life force in reactive loops. You respond with the resources of the full power version of yourself. You act with authorship. You're no longer at the mercy of your fluctuations. And the version of yourself who knows isn't a momentary glimpse, it's the only you and the one that you live as. If this gave form and clarity to something you felt but couldn't articulate, if you've tasted that clarity and want to stop losing it, go deeper. My course, Hooks and Chords, offers an under-the-hood look into reestablishing your inner authority so clarity becomes your baseline, not your breakthrough. Identifying and dismantling energetic cords, those invisible attachments shaping and draining you. Locating the emotional hooks that keep you entangled in loops, roles, and distortions. And reclaiming your energy, restoring your true shape, and learning to hold energetic boundaries in relationships. You'll find all the links in the description. Clarity isn't rare, it's just expensive. And once you stop investing your energy in all the wrong places, clarity becomes yours to keep. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll talk again soon.